We're back for your ears only. I'm Melissa Exelberth.
I'm David Alpern with this quote from the news. We can deny over and over again, but everyone has already read these reports and our soldiers are no longer safe. That was Croatian Prime Minister Zoran Milanovic on withdrawing peacekeeping forces from the Golan Heights after allegation that Croatian weapons were being passed to Syrian rebels. Also last week, Secretary of State John Kerry announced an aid package for the rebels that specifically excluded offensive weapons that could end up with hostile Islamists. Now this.
I felt like St. Peter and the apostles in the boat on the Sea of Galilee. The Lord gave us many days of light winds when the fish were abundant, but also times when the waters were stormy and the winds were against us, and the Lord seemed to be sleeping.
History may well note that nothing so suited the papacy of Benedict XVI as his leaving of it. The 85-year-old pontiff last week became the first in 6 centuries to step down voluntarily, with admission of personal weakness and reference to institutional problems that any successor will face, including alleged financial and sexual improprieties at high levels in the Vatican, child abuse by priests and its cover-up around the world, growing secularism, and dwindling ranks of pastors and parishioners in too many places.
Benedict also pledged loyalty to his successor and to stand aside from the controversies that continue to plague his church, though he will continue to live, read, pray, and play his beloved piano in a converted convent within Vatican walls. To consider how this resignation may or may not change the course of Roman Catholicism in the years ahead, for your ears only, we're joined now by Dr. Niels Nielsen, Jr., professor of philosophy and religious thought. Dr. Nielsen received a divinity degree and a Ph.D. from Yale, taught there, and founded the Department of Religious Studies at Rice University. His latest book is Religions of the World, Fundamentalism, Mythos, and World Religions. Welcome to our program.
Good to be with you.
Some observers say they expect little change from the next pope because so many of the cardinals who'll select him were elevated by Benedict. But could his resignation itself be interpreted as a call to them to put personal interest and even centuries of church tradition aside in the face of real-world contemporary problems?
Well, we need to say at the outset, I think, that the papacy, being pope, is one of the leading, if not the leading, position in Christendom. So it affects those of us who are not Roman Catholics and the Roman Catholic world of more than 1 billion. I think we ought to take the Pope at his word. He has a pacer for his heart. It is true that he can't manage the Vatican as much as he had as a younger man. But when this Pope steps aside, of course, then there are other problems that come to the fore and are being debated now.
In choosing a new pope, do you think the cardinals should look to a leader from Africa or Latin America where their religion is doing best, or as usual from Europe where it's been losing ground? In other words, choose democratic representation or more inspiration for an area that needs most attention?
Yeah, I follow John Allen, who reports for National Catholic Review in Rome, and he says it's not a guessing game at all. We just don't know what those cardinals are going to say. When the incumbent pope came up for the vote, he had a following. He was the pope's right-hand man. I think it could be a good chance whether we have a Canadian or an Argentinian. Equal chance probably with an Italian. More than 20 of this group of cardinals, maybe much more than that, are Italian in background. But Allen's judgment is it's anybody's guess. What we do know, of course, is that most of the men in the Curia were appointed by the incumbent pope, and he was a conservative. He took the church away from the direction of Vatican II, the council, to a more traditional view. He was head of the Holy Office and censored large numbers of theologians in his church. So there is certainly a large conservative party in the voting. There is probably a middle party and a few progressives, but not very many, they're telling us.
Beyond geography and the conservative liberal analysis, what are the characteristics on which you think the cardinals should place highest priority?
Well, the people that are pacing this are saying, first of all, they need a good manager for the Vatican. that the older pope hasn't been able to do as much as he'd like to. He also needs to have charisma. There's call for a missionary pope. This means, of course, that John Paul II, the Polish pope, traveled the world. Ratzinger hasn't traveled the world. He's played the role of an intellectual and a critic and a censor. And, of course, there is the problem of what the sexual ethic is going to come out of Rome. But I don't think we ought to let that factor be the primary one to decide. And there are certainly men of great ability and some of mediocre ability in the Curia.
Will the new pope have enough distance from the church's financial and child abuse scandals and enough power to take more aggressive action against them?
Yeah, here we need a manager, I think. The amount of priests who are involved in sexual scandals is very small, less than 4%, maybe much less than that. But this pope couldn't even manage his butler at the end, and I think he was very wise and generous to step aside. It's a courageous action.
Have these scandals contributed to the fall-off in Catholic priests and parishioners in many places?
Yeah, well, I think I, as a Protestant, wouldn't want to take a naive, critical stand on the crisis of sexuality in the Roman Church, but they certainly know and admit that they have it. And what the issues that they want to debate, they're not my issues, of women priests or married priests or contraception. Those are inter-Catholic issues, but they come out into the modern world. In the United States, the figure is about 22 million people of Roman Catholic background that are not practicing now. So one of the jobs the Pope will have is to, strengthen his clergy and the place of the church in the society.
Well, sometimes there's an argument in management of letting go. Is there an argument for more decentralization in this church, as in so much of contemporary life, with more potential for local appeal, dealing with local issues, local circumstance?
I just read what the people in Rome are saying, and nobody's much talking about decentralization. This is a hierarchical, it's the last great monarchy in the world. And I don't think it's about to pass out of existence.
Professor of Philosophy and Religious Thought Nielsen Jr. His latest book is Religions of the World, Fundamentalism, Mythos, and World Religions.
Quote from the news, "This was a record-keeping error that we recognized and have now corrected." That was Erin Statel, a NATO spokeswoman, announcing no decrease in enemy attacks in Afghanistan last year, not a 7% decline as previously reported. Also last week, infiltrators in the Afghan security forces killed at least 30 comrades over 2 days last week and fled to the Taliban.
Next, the growing threat of non-communicable disease, for your ears only.